Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is David King Etienne, and I am your marriage and relationship coach. And for this session, we're going to be looking at, now, if you noticed, when I tagged the topic for this session, I didn't call it communication. Yes, I called it effective communication. Effective communication. Now, there is communication and there is effective communication. There is a difference between the two. A lot of people confuse one for the other, but they are entirely two different things. Two different things. A lot of us communicate, but very few of us communicate effectively. Let me say that again. A lot of us communicate, but very few of us communicate effectively. So what makes for an effective communication? Within the communication space, we have a generally acceptable definition of communication that states that communication is not achieved until understanding is shared. Communication is not achieved until understanding is shared. Where understanding is not shared for lack of proper definition of words or terms, or for ambiguity, where we don't have certain things broken down for perfect understanding, there is something lacking that connects the message and the recipient of the message. And so to bridge that gap tonight, I want to share with us certain basic things. I call them basic because communication is deep, but I call these basic things that you should know as the fundamental things that makes communication what it is. Effective communication. Effective communication. Effective communication. Okay. I could tell someone now, get me a glass of water. And I would think that I communicated effectively. What I don't know is that I could have created confusion by that simple request. What do I mean? Give me a glass of water. I could choose to do anything with a glass of water. I didn't mention if I needed that glass of water to drink. There's nothing wrong if by the time you bring that glass of water, I poured it over my hands to wash my hands. I didn't also mention what kind of water I need. Whether cold, lukewarm, or room temperature, I didn't mention. And so it's possible for me to let you go thinking that you understood what I meant. And then you would go and bring water based on your interpretation of what I needed that water for. And then at the end of the day, it will happen that the two of us missed something when I communicated. And the result is, when you bring that water out, I might go, oh, sorry, I didn't tell you I don't drink cold water. Or the weather is cold. I thought you would bring me room temperature water. Or let's even assume that, the sun was hot and everywhere was burning, but maybe my nose was running and I don't need to take cold water from the refrigerator. And you, whom I asked for a glass of water, assume that, the weather is hot. When he asks for water, he has to mean cold water. So by yourself, you interpreted what I thought or what you thought I needed, and you brought it for me. And it appears that even though the weather is hot and I should have taken cold water, but because my nose was running at the time, I would tell you, sorry, this is why I can't take the cold water. So immediately you can see and understand that there is a difference between communication and effective communication. And in a lot of relationships today, we have so many errors when we are trying to communicate with our colleagues, our bosses, our partner, even our wives and husbands. Because we think that what we said was understood, but it wasn't. Because we are leaving the other person to interpret what it is that we are trying to say. Let me give us another illustration. Myself and Mr. Wilfred, we happen to not just be schoolmates from way back, but we happen to come from the same ethnic locality, from the same state in Akwa Ibom State in Nigeria. So, if I begin to speak our language now, the rest of you will be lost. I mean, no matter how much you try to understand what it is we are saying, it wouldn't make any sense to you. You wouldn't understand. So you could just be hearing certain things, the two of us discussing, but you wouldn't make any sense out of it. That barrier is caused due to language. In the course of today's session, we are also going to learn certain other barriers that impede communication. A lot of times we think that we are communicating, but they are barriers. They are like blockers, so that the things we are trying to say are just like bouncing off rather than sinking in. And so those are the things we want to look at tonight, so that by the time we are done with this session, our level of communication would have changed between us and the people we are in relationship with. So tonight, briefly, I want to go straight to looking at certain elements that are within the communication process. What you must understand is that communication is a process. Let me say that again. Communication is a process. It's not just an event. It is what? A process. And if you understand this process and understand the elements within this process, you will be able to navigate it in order to make your communication process to be successful and effective. So we have 7 elements within the communication process. So it doesn't matter whether you are telling your neighbor or your colleague or your boss, good morning, and you said something. It doesn't matter whether it's a discussion or a dialogue between you and your friend or your spouse or your partner. Whatever it is that you are trying to communicate with the other person calls for an inclusion of these 7 elements. And we're going to take them one after the other, so that you realize after today that that thing that you do that you think is just You see, that's why it's very important to not just talk anyhow. And we're going to find out at the end of today. The things that we say are very important because they carry a message or series of messages within them. Number one, the source. Every communication process has a source. Every communication process has what? A source. The person who intends to convey, now notice, when I talk or when I say something, I pay particular attention to the choice of words. So please, when I say some things, listen and listen very attentively. I want to read from my notes. The person who intends to convey the message with the intention of passing information and ideas to others is known as the source. Another name for the source is the sender. A third name for the source is the communicator. So you can either choose to call the person the source, the sender, or the communicator. They all mean one and the same thing. Now I say the person who intends to convey the message with the intention of passing information and ideas to others is known as the source, sender, or communication. This person is the originator of the message. Now, I use the word intends, you see, because anybody who wants to pass across a message to someone has an intention, has a reason, or has something they want to communicate. Now, it all happens that we think that the major channel, we'll get to that, the major way in which we try to communicate with people, we think it is words, but we are wrong if we think that. Words are not the major way through which we communicate. So in communication, we have the verbal cues and the non-verbal cues. The verbal mode of communication, like now I'm talking to you, that's verbal mode, and non-verbal mode of communication. Now, it will amaze you to discover that about 90%, listen to me, about 90+% of communication is non-verbal. Let me say that again. About 90+% of communication is non-verbal. In other words, communication without the use of words. So if someone were to come and talk with me now, I'm going to be watching out for certain things. Topmost on the list will be body language and tone of voice. Body language and tone of voice. These are embedded within the non-verbal cues of communication. So you could tell me that you are happy, but I look at you and I know you're sad. It's the opposite. You could tell me that you are not angry with me, but everything about you is saying otherwise. We all know that when we were in school, there are certain things we use to communicate to the lecturer that your time has elapsed. You're going to be hearing some shuffling of feet. You're going to be hearing people shaking their desk here and there. Different things that people are going to be doing to let the lecturer know that you've overstayed your welcome. But they never said it in words. And so, you see, it doesn't matter how much you try to impress people with your words, your actions would most of the time give you away. Your body language, your tone of voice. Those are things you cannot pretend for too long over because they'll give you up. Yes. Yes. So we're talking about the source, the sender, the originator of the message. You are important, like I said, intends to convey a message. This person has an intention to convey a message, but whether he or she succeeds or not is dependent on so many factors. And where the message is not successfully understood or conveyed properly, there will be a lot of misunderstanding. misunderstanding. I usually tell people, don't get upset if what you're trying to tell me, I don't get to understand it. We are two different people. We think differently, different mindset. And so if I don't get you immediately, it means something is wrong within the communication process. Something is wrong. Something is wrong. And a lot of times, the thing that could be wrong could be even from the source. How do I mean? Imagine a madman communicating with you or trying to communicate with you. That madman believes solely that he or she is saying something that you should understand. But you and I know that it will be almost impossible to comprehend the communication of the madman. So in that particular instance, we have a problem with the source. We have a problem at that instance with the source. So the source could be the reason why communication is not effective. And if communication is not effective, we will not attain understanding. So who are you? I'm asking you now if you are the source of that communication. Or who is the person that is trying to communicate with you, for starters? It's very important. So I would tell people at times, it's needless to get into argument with some people. Because for starters, that argument is not going to land you anywhere or within anything that will give you the solution that you want. Why? The source is already flawed. The source. It's important to consider who the source is. And in a situation where the source is perfect, the source is good enough to listen to, the source is not going through certain things. It could be mentally, it could be psychologically, it could be emotionally. There are certain people who lack the capacity or the capability to communicate at certain times because of certain things they are going through. So for those kind of people, or just in case you are that kind of person, if you realize that there's something wrong with my mental state, there's something wrong with my emotional state, there's something wrong with my psychological state or physiological state at this point in time, the truth about it is you lack the ability to communicate properly at that time. Suspend the communication. Wait until such a time where you know that you are perfectly balanced enough to render that communication. Otherwise, you will find yourself saying things you shouldn't have said, saying things that you may end up regretting because you said them at times when your mind or your psyche was not in perfect balance. The source. Very important. The source. Now, in a situation where the source is the person who is trying to communicate with you, there are certain people you shouldn't listen to at every point in time, depending on their state of balance. Being able to communicate the right way and to say the right things. The best thing to do at such times is to walk away or to excuse the person or to postpone that session of communication or interaction. The source. Very, very important. Okay. Our second element here within the communication process is the message. The message. The message. Every communication has one singular responsibility to deliver a message. To deliver a message. So if I want to speak with you, in my mind, before I even open my mouth to speak, I'm supposed to know what I want to convey to you and what I want you to understand. Remember, I said earlier that communication is not achieved until understanding is achieved. In other words, there has to be a uniformity between the source and the receiver. If at the end of the day, what I'm trying to communicate to you is not understood by you, in simple terms, you are going to misunderstand it. You are going to misunderstand it. And so the message is important. I have to identify, what do I want to say? What do I want him to understand from me? Very key. And so that communication balance that they say, well, it's not a communication balance, so to say. You hear people say things like, look before you leap. There are a lot of people who like to leap before they look. So they are in the air already. Then they realize that, oh, this place I'm going to be landing is going to give me trouble. But they've already leapt. And there's nothing they can do about it, because the law of gravity says anything that goes up must what? Come down. So you are bound to come down. And when you come down, you are going to experience the effect of your leap. Because there's another law at work which we call cause and effect. You're responsible and completely in control of the cause, but you are not in control of the effect. The moment the cause has been activated, the effect is bound to follow. So we're talking about communication. And I say the message is important. So if in the past you've been within the category of people who usually would leap before before they think where they are about to land on, please, today, begin to intentionally and consciously change that pattern of your life. Because a lot of times you will find yourself doing things that you end up regretting because you didn't take your time to initiate them. Very key, very important. So, the message. This is the subject matter of the communication. Have you found yourself in a situation where somebody told you, I want to discuss something with you, and the person spends 30 minutes, 1 hour talking, and by the time the person has finished talking, you are wondering, what did he say? So the person spent your time and his or her time talking, but could not convey the message. It was enveloped there, but he couldn't bring it out, or she couldn't bring it out. The key element within communication is the message. That is what you want the other person to get. A lot of times people don't know how to carry the message and to make sure that that person not only receives the message, but understands the message. So what is the message? It's vital that you are able to identify the message. Then we're going to be packaging it. But now, first and foremost, the message. So this is the subject matter of the communication. It is what the source wants to communicate. This may be an opinion, an attitude, feelings, views, or suggestions. The assignment of the communicator is to encase or encapsulate this message in a way that meaning can be shared with the receiver. This is where the next element comes in. I'm going to talk about that element later, or very shortly. But we are saying that the message is the vital thing we are talking about here. What is the message? What does this person or you listening to me tonight, what do you want to communicate or convey? To your partner, to your husband, to your wife, to your children. Yes, children. Because a lot of times, parenting becomes very tough when you cannot find yourself communicating expressly to your children in a manner that they will not only hear you, but understand you. So I usually say, for instance, to parents, I say, when you are dealing with children, don't tell them the what. Always try to get them to understand the why. If they understand the why, it stays with them longer. It stays with them deeper than the what. A lot of parents try to insist on the what. Do this, don't do this. Do this, don't do this. but the child does not know why. I don't want to see, maybe the mother is talking with her daughter, and she's like, I don't want to see you with those men. And the girl is like, what's wrong with men? Is there anything wrong with men? Daddy is a man. I have brothers who are men. Is there anything wrong with a man? No. So in communicating with that kind of a girl, you have to let her understand the why. You are telling her to beware of certain men. Not all men, of course, certain men. And you leave her with enough education to make her to be able to identify the kind of men you are talking about. So when they leave there, they don't just see mommy as someone who is trying to limit my fun in life, but they see mommy as someone who is able to hold them and make them stand, giving them perfect understanding about what is going on in this life, because mommy was here and had more experience than her at this point in time. Effective communication is what we're talking about. Effective communication, where we don't just talk, we don't just pour words, but we pour words with meaning. We pour words with what? Meaning. So the message. And you see, I said something about packaging the message, because the message is the element that you want to get across to the receiver. The packaging is the third element, and we call it encoding. Yes, that's the third element of communication. We call it encoding. So we've looked at the source, we are looking at the message. Now the third element is what? Encoding. That is where you decide to, encase or encapsulate the message you are trying to communicate to send across. Encoding. Now that sounds like a digital term. It sounds like a term that is mostly used within the telecommunication, Now, encoding, of course, is a term that can be used scientifically. For instance, here am I, hundreds, thousands of kilometers away from you, and I'm talking, and you're seeing my picture live. You're hearing my voice live. So what's happening here? I'm using these headphones, and I'm speaking, and my words get into the headphones, travel through this cable into the device. From there, it gets, into the cloud, gets into your device, and then you can hear me. How is that made possible? How are you getting this picture right now? How would I send you a picture that I took, probably with my phone, and it travels through the air and gets to you? They call that process encoding and decoding. So, for me to send this message to you now over this device through the cloud, which we call the internet, to get to you, it has to be encoded in a way that it can travel through that empty space called the internet. Empty in a sense. Empty to the physical eyes, but loaded with so many things. And then for your device to pick it up, your device has to perform what is called decoding. Okay, let's come back from the technical aspect now. I use the word encoding in the sense, in simple terms, to let you know that this is the way to package. So let me read what I have in my notes here. I say, since the subject matter of communication is only a thought or idea in the mind of the communicator, it remains intangible. Only the one whose mind it stays in can understand its meaning. To share this meaning with others, further breakdown is required where the use of certain symbols, such as words, actions, pictures, signs, must be used. Conversion of subject messages into these symbols is what we call encoding. I could choose to use words like I'm speaking right now, and that I'm saying that this is my tool for encoding what I have to say, so that you can understand me. I said earlier, for instance, that Mr. Wilfred and myself, we don't just go way back from school, but we come from the same place, in the flesh. So we speak the same language. So I could decide right now that I want to pass across a message. A message. And if that message is meant for only Wilfred to understand, I will then speak in my dialect. I've decided that I'm going to give a message now, but that message is meant for only Wilfred to understand. I'm going to package that message in such a way that only Wilfred will understand me. That's the meaning of encoding. So we have a situation where in certain homes, husbands and wife, they have certain terminologies that they use. Coded terms. Certain terminologies. It could be something as simple as, sweetheart, is there groundnut there? And everybody in the room heard groundnut, but my wife heard something else. It's called encoding. So everybody else thought that when I spoke, I meant groundnut. But my wife, who knows that we have a language that we use, a code that we use, will know that I'm not referring to groundnut to eat. I'm referring to something else that we have assigned that code to. Encoding. Very key in communication. How do you ensure that what I'm trying to say is getting to the other person and the message is understood? Encoding. It could be language. It could be action. Encoding could also be deceptive. Well, should I use the word deceptive? Deceptive, but not intentionally. For instance, a woman can look at you, maybe your wife, and tell you, I hate you. But you see, while she said, I hate you, she's smiling. And she might even be hitting you. I hate you, I hate you, and all of that. So she has used a word that is supposed to sound negative, but she has encoded it with a smile, an action, with a smile and playfulness that lets you understand that what she said was simply a joke. Now imagine if she was actually joking and then she came with a straight face. I hate you. Only she knows that she's joking. And you see, her intention stays with her and in her mind. But the moment it comes out, the packaging is what determines how the other person could receive it. So a lot of times you hear people saying, but I didn't mean it that way. You didn't mean it that way, but that is how it was perceived and received because of the packaging. So be very conscious of your packaging. Otherwise, your message can be misunderstood. And you don't have to spend the whole of your life trying to trying to correct errors that have been made. Because you see, some errors are irreparable. Some could go as far as causing several damage that you did not expect. It just came because, or happened because of the packaging, which I call encoding. Don't just talk anyhow. Words cannot be withdrawn. Don't just act anyhow. Actions cannot be withdrawn. Like they say, actions speak what? Louder than words. Yes, which is very true. Like I said earlier, that 90+% of communication is non-verbal. So if you want to depend on only the things you say or only the things that other people say to you to think that you have full communication or understanding of what they are trying to say or communicate, that's an error. That's an error. So don't get into that relationship, like I said, whether it's with your boss, whether it's with your husband or wife, whether it's with your children, whether it's with your parents, whether it's with your colleague at work. Don't get into any relationship and only depend on the things that are said either with the mouth or in writing or what have you. These are elements that you must consider and look at for communication to be what? Effective. Effective. Don't forget, that's the subject matter of tonight. Effective communication. Our key word there is what? Effective. And like I said earlier, I like repeating it so that it sinks in, is that communication is not effective until understanding is shared. Until understanding is achieved. If you think you said something and I did not understand you, you did not achieve communication. Or rather, you did not achieve what? Effective communication. Okay. Number 4. We've looked at the source, we've looked at the message, we've looked at the encoding or the encoder. The fourth is the medium, which we also call the channel. Somebody say, does it mean that anytime we want to communicate, we have to consider all of these things? It's about understanding and knowing how to navigate the communication process. Over time, you can begin to get it properly. So we're bound to make mistakes. We're bound to create errors as we communicate. In fact, as I'm talking now, your mind is beginning to play back and you're beginning to see, certain things that you did wrongly with someone you're in relationship with when you thought you communicated, but you didn't. Or where you thought that they should have understood you because you're trying to insist that, okay, understand me now, this is what I'm trying to say, and all of that. They will not understand you because, like I always would tell us, we are all what? Different. We are all different. I don't want to go into the law of difference. That's another subject matter entirely. I don't want to go there. The law of difference. Maybe one of these days we'll look at it. Yeah. Maybe, just maybe. The law of difference, because a lot of us don't realize that we are different, and so when we get into relationship with people, one of our greatest frustration is why is this person different from me? Why is he not like me? Why can't you think like I think? Why can't you act like I act? Don't you see the way I do things? And you expect that person should do the same things the way you do things. No. It's not automatic. It doesn't happen that way. That's for another day, please. So we're talking about the medium. Let me read my notes here. The person who is interested in communicating has to choose the channel or medium for sending the required information or ideas. This information is transmitted to the receiver through certain channels, which may be either formal or informal. Choosing the appropriate channel per time is very important depending on the type of person you are or your partner is. So let me use a physical example now. I have a relationship with Mr. Wilfred, sorry. I have a relationship with him. Maybe I do something at any point in time to offend him. It could be possible that Mr. Wilfred is expecting to hear my voice over the phone, calling him and saying, Mr. Wilfred, I'm sorry. That action that I took yesterday or day before yesterday, I didn't realize it's going to hurt you this bad. I'm so sorry. I'm terribly sorry. Maybe that's what his expectations are, or what would be perfect for that apology to get across to him. Then a friend of mine calls him and says, Mr. Wilfred, I was with David King this afternoon, and we got into some dialogue, and he mentioned something he did to you yesterday. Please forgive him. He's sorry. That could be a wrong channel. The apology has found its way through a wrong channel. That could be a wrong channel. In some cases. That channel could work at times. So maybe that's why you see at times maybe a husband has an issue with a wife, and maybe it's so frustrating, it's so painful that the wife picks her luggages and packs out of the house, and the husband feels, I need to get through to her. And anytime the husband approaches her or even finds her and wants to approach her to either apologize or something, he's threatened. Maybe with a weapon or something. Or he just knows that his life could be in danger if he makes that move. That could be the wrong channel. But at that time, the channel could be go through her mom. Go through what? Her mom. The channel could be. So I'm trying to make us understand that there is no particular and acceptable channel for any form of communication. It is your place to intuitively or based on experience know what is the proper channel. You have packaged the message is well put together, but the channel could cause that message not to be received. Not to be received. So what is the channel through which you are sending messages? What is the channel? Some people could use text message. Some people could use human beings as channels. Some people could use different. What is your channel? Your message has been encoded, packaged. Your message is identified. But now the channel through which you want to communicate that message. There are some people who, when their partner is very aggressive, very vexed, very angry, all it could just take to communicate a message could just be a hug. A hug. For some, it could be something else. Understanding. Now, all of these things I'm sharing is not as though, okay, you're going to leave here tonight and know, okay, this is the channel I'm going to use for this. This is the channel I'm going to use for this. This is the channel I'm going to use for this. No, that's not what I'm saying. So, you are going to be, that's why this thing is called relationship. 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 It has to do with you and some other person or group of persons. But it's a relationship. Meaning that as you have a relationship with them, as you mingle with them, You get to understand them. You get to understand the things they like. You get to understand the things they dislike. And all of that makes certain things better. What is your channel through which you are trying to get that message after it's been packaged across to the person you are trying to reach with the message? The channel is important. And I said another name for channel is what? Medium. Number 5, the receiver. The receiver. So I said we have 7 elements within the communication process. 3 of them has to do with the sender, the source. We have the message itself. We have the encoder. Then we have the medium or the channel. Now, after the message has gotten over to the other side, this guy has finished his packaging and everything, sends it across the right channel. Now it gets to the other side. On the other side, we have what? The receiver. Now, remember I said certain things about the source, which is the sender. So the same thing that happens, why I said be particular about the source. Who is the source? Where I said, is it possible that the, where I said that is it possible that the source is affected mentally, psychologically, emotionally? Or the source shouldn't even be in a place where he's trying to communicate. The same thing happens to the receiver. There are times where the receiver should not even bother receiving some kind of message. So I could sit down and depending on certain things that may have transpired, I may receive a text message. And I look at my phone, I look at that text message, and I'm like, I don't think I should read this now. And the reason I don't want to read it at that point is because I know, I perceive that because of certain things that may have ensued at certain points in time, if I open this message now to read it, it could be like opening a Pandora's box. And so I want to get my mental stability. I want to get myself in a position to be able to receive the message. Then I open the text. There are some calls that when they come, I don't pick that call, not because I'm trying to be rude, but I'm not in a state or frame of mind to pick what is about to come. And so I wait. And then at times when I may be in a state to receive that message, to now show that I wasn't being rude, I return the call. And there's nothing wrong if I have to let the other person know that I wasn't in a proper state of mind to take the call at the time. Relationship. It's not every time we listen to certain things. It's not every time we say or do certain things. The timing based on our state of mind, based on our physiological expressions are important. Psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and all. You too, who is the source? It's not every time you send certain kind of messages to the receiver. Because you know that this person is not in the frame of mind to take this message at this time. You don't. You delay. Or you wait for the appropriate time. If husbands and wives knew this, if bosses knew this, if subordinates, colleagues in the office knew this, certain things that they have caused to happen by sending the messages at the wrong time or to the person who wasn't ready to receive it could have been averted. The receiver. Does the receiver have the ability to interpret the message? So, for instance, like I said earlier, imagine that I wanted Mr. Wilfred to understand something that I want to say to him alone, and I speak it in my dialect. The rest of you lack the ability to interpret what I'm saying. So it doesn't matter what I have said or what I want to say, there is no way you will be able to interpret. So it doesn't matter how beautifully packaged the message was. It doesn't matter how the channel was right. It doesn't matter if I, the source, was perfect in my state of mind to send that message. It has come. But you, the receiver, was in no place to understand it. And that takes us to the next thing beyond the receiver, and that is decoding. I hope we are getting this. That's the sixth thing. Decoding. Decoding. So the source was okay. The message was okay. The packaging, which is the encoding, was intact. The channel or the medium was right. In some cases, the receiver is right, but the receiver cannot decode because the receiver does not have the adequate skills or tools required to decode the message. So like I said earlier, imagine where my wife and I may have used a particular code to say something, to communicate with ourselves so that we understand ourselves, and it gets to the other person. The person is unable to break the code. That's what we're talking about. So an encoding has been done, but the person lacks the skill, the knowledge, the ability, the wherewithal to break the code, to decode. The decoding facility is absent. Oh God, I pray we understand all of the things I'm trying to communicate with. It may sound a little bit technical, it sounds a little bit, but please follow me. That's why I'm trying to use as much analogy as I can to express or to pass across. You see, we're also doing communication right now. And I'm trying the best I can to be sure that I'm doing it effectively. Because I want you to understand at the end of the day. I mean, you wouldn't spend 1 hour or thereabouts with me tonight, and at the end of the day, you didn't understand anything I said. I would have failed completely. I would have failed completely. So I want you to understand me. So I'm trying the best I can to ensure that everything I'm saying is getting across to you and you're understanding me. Understanding is key to communication. Without understanding, communication did not happen. And if we thought it happened, it was not effective. So the decoder. Let me read from my notes. The person who receives the message or symbol from the communicator tries to convert the same in such a way so that he may extract its meaning to his complete understanding. So during encoding, there was a packaging of a message. Now, when it comes over to the person who is receiving it, the person is supposed to crack open that code by decoding it so that he or she can bring out the message and understand what was packaged. You see, we take communication for granted. We take communication for granted. But it's not. It's deep. And the moment we understand it, we will not talk anyhow. We will not do things anyhow because it's deep and their meanings are lasting. Very important. Okay, at this point, I want to introduce a case. I have a case study here that I want to read for us. Imagine someone said to his or her partner, "You are a clown." So many things could be tied around that statement to enable proper understanding of its meaning. If one is smiling when saying you are a clown, that is already evident that they probably were joking. You cannot keep a straight face when making such a statement if you were joking and expect your partner to understand that you were joking. This would mean that you encoded your message with the wrong gesture and action. It is bound to be decoded wrongly. Because you see, you are not with the person receiving. You don't have the person's mindset. You are not with the person decoding. You don't have the person's mindset. You don't. You don't know how he's going to interpret or how she's going to interpret what you're going to say. So you can't just package it anyhow. You have to package it in such a way that when it gets over to the other side, the other person can unpackage it, can decode it without hindrance. So I usually would tell people, don't be upset when people don't understand you when you share something with them. So you spend 30 minutes, 1 hour talking to someone and the person not understand you, and then you're upset. Say, all these things I've been saying, you can't get me, you can't understand me. No, it's not as simple as that. The fact that you spoke in English language is not why the person should understand you. Because there are so many deep things that are embedded and hidden in the message. Or there could be a hindrance on the other side. Decoding. And for understanding to be shared, it is the responsibility of the one trying to communicate to ensure that his or her packaging has been properly done and has been sent across through the proper channel, and then the other person can now begin to break it down, decode it for understanding to be shared. Okay, so all things being equal, let's assume that the source was right, the timing was right. Let's assume that the message was right. Let's assume that the encoding, which is the packaging, was right. Let's assume that the medium or the channel was right. Let's also assume that the decoder was right. There's an element, which is the seventh element that I'm about to mention here, which is very key and very important. Feedback. What did I say? Feedback. What is feedback? Feedback is simply that element that makes me, the communicator, to know that my message was understood. A lot of us communicate without feedback. And feedback doesn't necessarily mean to ask the other person, did you understand me? That is a feedback that can be prompted. So at times it's always good to know that someone understood you. Whether it's a boss trying to relay an information to, his subordinate or his staff, you have to be sure that the person understood you. You don't just say something and assume that the person understood you. Because if the person does not, that could be expensive or costly for your establishment. Because that person is going to go ahead and execute something that you did not intend or you did not mean. But because you thought the person understood you, you walked away. But the person did not. So you came back and you got the negative result as opposed to what you were expecting to get. Your message was not understood. And the only way for you to confirm that your message was understood is feedback. Feedback. You cannot eliminate feedback from communication. But a lot of us do not engage feedback. We just talk. We say something to our partner, we walk away. We are not aware whether they understood us or not. You say something to your colleague in the office, you walk away. In fact, even when you... it doesn't matter. Even in the place of business, you're trying to communicate to your to your client or to someone who you want to employ to do something for you, and you just say something. You're not even confirming if they understood you, and you walk away, and you come back, and they give you the result that you did not expect, and you get upset, you get offended. You take them to court, you sue them, you claim damages. Which all of these could have been avoided if the person understood you and then you got what you wanted. Because you tried to communicate, but you were not effective. Feedback. Feedback. Are you talking to your child, your son or your daughter? At the end of that communication, be sure they understand you or they understood you. At times, if possible, tell them, okay, share with me, what did you understand by what I said? And then you sit back and you listen to be sure they got you. It doesn't matter what means of feedback or what kind of feedback, but always watch out for feedback, because that is the only element that will confirm if your message was understood or not. Feedback. Feedback. Okay. In all of this, there is an 8 element, so to speak. An 8 element, so to speak. An 8 element, so to speak. Now, but the reason that this element is not classified under the other 7 elements is because this 8 element is not cost. It's not cost. It is just something that exists. Don't be confused. I'm going to make you understand what I'm talking about. And it exists within the entire communication process. This 8 element I'm about to mention. Very key, very important. It is called noise. Hello? This 8 element I'm about to mention, like I said, it's not something. It's not something that you are in control over. The rest of the other stuff, from source, message, encoding, channel, decoding, all of that are within our control, within the communication process. But these 8 elements is beyond your control. So somebody say, if it's beyond my control, so okay, why do I need to even know about it? It's good for you to know its existence so that you can realize when it is at work. And I said that 8 element is what? Noise. Noise. So remember, I said earlier that even from the source, I said noise exists all throughout the process. So remember, I kept saying something that the source, who is the sender, at times may not be in a proper state of communicating, either mentally, emotionally, psychologically. These are aspects of noise within the source. Remember I said that. Aspect of noise within the source. If somebody has an emotional breakdown, you don't calm emotional breakdown just like that, as though you're turning on and off a switch. You don't. You can't. So what will you have to do? You will probably have to rest, relax, calm down. Just allow certain things to take their course. And gradually, you can get your healing from whatever it is that may have caused you that emotional upset at that point in time. Let's say it's physiological. In other words, when I say physiological, it's something that, is happening to your body. So for instance, I will tell men, I said the worst time to discuss anything meaningful with your wife is when she's going through her menstrual cycle. Her body, everything about her is upside down. Well, not every woman is the same. Some women don't even experience as much cramps as some other women. But you see, because at that point something is happening within them, it makes them a little bit unstable. whether or without the cramps. And you see, you can be talking to her and she's looking at you like this and you think she's paying attention. She's not hearing a word you are saying. There's noise within her system. Noise that was not caused by her. Noise that she may not be able to eliminate. It's called physiological noise. Physiological. That's what it's called. There's the physical noise. So, for instance, if I was in a market square, okay, let's assume that I went into a stadium where Chelsea and Manchester United were playing a football match. I decided to go into that stadium to have this live meeting with you. You will not be able to hear, not to talk of comprehend what I am saying. That kind of noise is called physical noise. Physical noise. Then we have the physiological noise, like I just explained. Then we have the psychological noise. I mean, this person, his state of mind is not ready. So there's all kinds of noise within the system, within the communication process, that makes you, the communicator, and even the person who is the receiver, to identify certain things within the communication process that helps them to know what may be impeding that communication at that point in time. And so timing is very key with communication. And being able to identify what level of noise is in operation is also very key. So like I said, using the physiological noise as an example, I shouldn't get upset with my partner if for any reason she could not comprehend what I was trying to communicate, and I know she's going through her menstrual cycle. At that point, I should immediately know that, oh, in as much as everything may be correct, the timing is wrong with regards to what she is going through within her body. Noise. Noise. Not created by the communicator, not created by the receiver, but yet noise exists. Can you identify the noise and isolate it? Because if you don't, you are equally not going to understand or receive the full context or the understanding that you are meant to get because of the presence of noise. All right. That is where we are going to call it a night today. So I try to give you a whole understanding of what goes on when we try to communicate. And I broke it down into 7 elements. And then I mentioned that 8th element. And I said the reason why I'm not including the 8th element to the other 7 is because the 8th, more or less, is something that happens without anybody's introduction of it. And at times, there is absolutely nothing we can do, a lot of times, about the noise. A lot of times. It's like we are handicapped. A lot of times. The best thing we can do is to watch our timing or get ourselves eliminated from the environment of noise. For instance, if it has to do with physical noise, for instance, I would have to remove myself from that element of noise. I may not be able to stop the noise, but I could remove myself from that element of noise. And so it's important that we understand this process. Now, I'm not saying that every time before you talk, you have to sit down, carry your pen and paper and say, okay, I'm the source. Who is the message? What is the message? How am I going to encode? No. That's not what I'm saying. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the more you get to understand that all of this is happening. Okay, I like using this illustration. If I want to give someone a punch right now, it's possible that I'm going to be walking 1, 2, 3 joints. My wrist joint, my elbow joint, and my shoulder joint, all working in symmetry to deliver that punch. I didn't have to walk this first and walk this first and then walk this. They all worked together. So when you understand these different elements and you begin to understand them, even when you maybe make mistakes and you get up and you go again, see, gradually you begin to enjoy finesse in delivery. So you got to be patient with yourself. You got to take it one step at a time. The first thing to do is to be conscious that these exist as individual elements within the communication process. And you try the best you can as you get along until it becomes a part and parcel of you. So much so that you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things so fast in a couple of seconds without even having to think about it. That way you have crossed over from your conscious state into your subconscious state, where these things happen before you even get to think about it. Through what? Practice. And through what? Execution. Through practice and through what? Execution. So with that, we've come to the end of our session for tonight on effective communication. Communication is not just about you talking. Communication is about you ensuring that whatever it is that you are trying to communicate is what? Understood by the other person on the other end of the communication plane. Source, message, encoder, channel, decoder, receiver, and then to be sure that the receiver got the message, always ensure some form of what? Feedback. Otherwise, you just said or pushed a message out that was not properly or perfectly understood. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of this class again, and I want to appreciate you for staying with me for this long. Please feel free to send in your feedback at this time so that I get to realize or know that everything I try to communicate or pass across to you tonight was perfectly understood. Otherwise, until next time, it's bye-bye.